Realtree has always had a connection to the fishing industry and the outdoor lifestyle. In 2016, Realtree expanded on the traditional business of creating the world's most effective camouflage patterns to create a fishing brand and family of patterns designed to connect the woods to the water and strengthen the bond between the two worlds. We couldn't be more excited to be working with the industry's top brands, retailers, and anglers to continue our growth, and we hope that you will join us. Enjoy Realtree fishing patterns inshore, offshore, on the lake, or at the dock. Learn more about the extensive line Realtree fishing patterns, apparel, gear, and more at Realtree.com.
One thing that all of us outdoorsmen and women love to do is travel, whether to fish new waters or to chase wild game in other areas that we may not get opportunities at in our own area. Our friends at Monster Reservations Group want to open up an entirely new chance for you to travel and enjoy the outdoors or just relaxing. With over 40 destinations in the U.S. like beautiful Gatlinburg, Tennessee, Wisconsin Dells, and Shenandoah Valley, Virginia, Poconos, Pennsylvania, and even our backyard here at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And many more. They are going to give you twice the vacation. That's right. Pay for 4 nights, and you're going to get 4 nights for free. That's $498 for an 8-night stay at one of our incredible destinations, and that's for simply listening to Trilogy Outdoors. Go book your trip and get all the details at www.monsterrg.com. That's monsterrg, all lowercase.com. Pay less for an incredible opportunity to explore the outdoors in your choice of over 40 destinations. Book your trip now.
Hi, I'm Jim Shockey, and I would like to extend all of you a warm invite to our Jim Shockey Classic Military Charity Event. Our 2021 Military Charity Event was a huge success, and our 2022 event is going to be even better. The proceeds from our military charity event, supported by Freedom Hunters, is going to help get the men, women, and families of our U.S. and Canadian Armed Forces out on outdoor adventures. There is no better cause than honoring the courageous men and women who protect our freedoms. So join Louise and me on March 27th and 28th, 2022 at the Wild Dunes Resort on Isle of Palms in South Carolina. Go to JimShockeyClassic.com to register, and I'll see you there.
Trilogy Outdoors.
Hey, that's right, folks. It's time for another Trilogy Outdoors podcast here with my good buddy, Senator Stephen Goldfinch, who's had a very busy last couple of weeks there at work, hadn't you, brother? I mean, your other job. I mean, your real job.
How many of those do I have?
You got a lot of them nowadays.
Yeah, no, we have. We've been accomplishing some good stuff. I hope we've been accomplishing some good stuff. Every day that I walk in there into the Senate, I realize I'm honored to be there. Sometimes it feels painful to drag yourself away from home and the ocean and all the great things we have here on the coast. But I'm blessed to be there.
Well, I tell you what, it's great. But we since we set out on this venture, we have discussed and covered many topics, and probably not as much just solid fishing as I would have liked to. But I have learned and enjoyed so many other podcasts far more doing other stuff than I thought I would ever. But today's guest, who I lined up, is and I'm gonna call him a good friend, because you can be a good friend with this guy and have never shaken his hand before. He is way bigger than life. Big water adventures. I'm gonna tell you one thing. Don't let the name of that show fool you, but he's been doing it for a long time, and it is my pleasure to introduce South Carolina's own Mark Davis. And Mark, man, I can't thank you enough. It's been too long since you and I have been texting. I go back and I scroll my phone, and I'm like, I think it goes back to like 2.5 years where I tried to get you on the radio show with us here. And, man, I'm super excited to have you on the Trilogy Outdoors podcast with Senator Goldfinch and I.
It's great to be here, brother. I'm local everywhere I go, but I'm for sure local in South Carolina.
Hey, amen.
Yeah, I was actually surprised to know that you were from South Carolina, and I've watched your show for years. I know a lot of people that have watched your show, and somehow or another, I just assumed you were one of the Florida guys, but you're not.
No, I've I was South Carolina before it was cool. I've been here since 1994. I was born in the wrong place in the Midwest, and I took the two best things to come out of Central Indiana, which is I-65 South and my wife, and I've been here ever since.
That's great.
That's excellent.
That's great. I mean, were you into fishing before you moved here, or did that all start up when you got here?
Yeah. I was. I thought I was going to come down here. I came down here in the heyday of Santee Cooper and Lake Murray with the hydrilla, before they killed it all. And I was going to tournament bass fish. And, it's kind of funny. I found myself down on Shem Creek in about 1993, and I'm looking at all these boats. And somehow or other, I ended up on the Thunderstar out of Shem Creek and went offshore for the first time. And, I had seen the ocean a couple of times, but I had never fished it until I was 21, almost 22 years old, never fished in the ocean. Fished my whole life, fished for everything in freshwater you can fish for and most of the places you can fish for it. But I went out in the ocean, and I had a pivotal moment in my career when I suddenly realized that the ocean was an entirely different environment. I came back with just a complete, just blown away with what was out there and the things that I didn't know. That was probably the biggest takeaway was, 22 years old, spent my whole life fishing, and I knew nothing. I walked into Hadrill's, and they're in Charleston, actually in Isle of Palms, and or Mount Pleasant. Man.
Yeah.
There you go. You got it.
Yeah, Mike Abel's a great friend, by the way.
Mike Abel's good people.
Mike Abel was the first person that I talked to, and I walked in and I looked around in Mount Pleasant, and I didn't know anything. I mean, I'm looking at the walls. I'm like, what's this for? What's that for? What's this for? And it just blew me away that there was that much of the world of fishing that I was completely clueless. And I literally thought about it for about a week. I had just got out of college and was working at Charleston Sports and Rec at the time as a fishing department manager. And I walked into Levon Reeves and Stuart Reeves at Triple R Charters on Shem Creek with the Thunderstar, the Atlantic Star, and the Rising Star at the time. And I said, I'd like to apply for a deckhand job. And Levon looked at me. He said, well, what's your experience level? I said, counting last week. And he goes, what? I said, I rode the boat last week. He goes, well, you can count last week if you want. I said, one day, sir. And I started as a part-time deckhand, went to a full-time deckhand, part-time mate, first mate, part-time captain, and then ran the boat for a little while after I got my 100-ton over the course of about the next 9 years. And it just, I'm not going to tell you I don't bass fish. I still do. I still love it. I love freshwater. First week of May, I go up to Lake Erie every year for a media event, and we fish for salmon, steelhead, walleye, perch, smallmouth bass, all that stuff. But it just, man, it was a reckoning for me when I went out in the ocean the first time and really saw what was going on. And I haven't been the same ever since. It messed me up.
I think it messes a lot of people up, quite frankly.
Yeah.
We have a fantastic fishery off of South Carolina, and there's not a lot of people that really know about it, quite frankly. And I've always attributed that to it not being very accessible. Florida has got an accessible fishery. Anybody with a kayak, in some places, not all places, but anybody with a kayak and a fishing rod can fish in Florida. South Carolina, if you want to go, catch a big grouper or a snapper or hogfish, catch a lobster while you're scuba diving, I mean, you got to get out in 40, 50 miles, sometimes 60 miles if you want to go to the break to catch dolphin or marlin, wahoo. But, I mean, it's a hard place to fish, and I think that creates a very good fishery because it's difficult to get to.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, believe it or not, shortly after that, not to get too far in the weeds, but after I left Charleston Sports, I started working for Marie Sporting Goods as a wholesale tackle rep. So I was calling on Walmart and at the time Sports Town and Charleston Sports and all the other ones that are around, Academy, all of them. And I ended up going to work one night, and make a long story short, there was a guy knocked on the door after we'd already closed, and I was closing up with my buddy Andy Pickett that owned CharlestonFishing.com.
I know Andy.
Oh yeah, we know.
Andy was the first guy to ever take me saltwater fishing inshore, and him and I were closing the store up, and a guy knocks on the front door, and I walk out there, and I said, we're closed. And the guy said, well, I was wanting to look at, this reel. And I said, man, figures it'd be a fisherman. I said, all right, you got 5 minutes. Come on in. So he comes on in. We talk at the table, talk tackle. And it was really I'm not going to name the brand, but I'm just going to tell you that there was a tournament series and a tournament gold series. And about the only difference between two was about $100. And I was pointing that out to him. Come to find out, he worked up at Shakespeare, and they were looking to get into higher-end reels. At the time, they pretty much just had ugly sticks and a few, like essentially China reels and not much else. And we got started talking. He handed me a business card. He said, let's stay in touch. 3 years later, I was working up there doing public relations and had left Charleston. That's how I got on board and learned the TV side of it. I had really honestly, Team Iowa on the bass side had the guys, and on our side we had Fluger and All-Star. We were really the first two what you'd call pro teams. I had Mark Davis, Clark Wendlandt, Tim Horton, Mark Menendez, a bunch of guys in my stable. And that's how I learned that side of the business with the print, the television. So tie all that stuff in. We got sold, bought, and I took a look at it and said, you know what? I'm seeing – really, at the time, Jose was still around, and, some guys were starting to retire. Sisson was starting to slow down a little bit, and there wasn't a whole lot of really good destination, driven adventure entertainment in saltwater. And I kind of decided, you know what, I'm going to sink my 401k into this, and I sunk a 20-year 401k into it and started it up, and Big Water Adventures was born.
Man, that's an incredible story. Incredible success story.
Yeah, that's the Reader's Digest version. I can tell you I'm competing against the big boys on Outdoor Channel. I mean, it's kind of funny, if you really want to see something hilarious, and you probably never noticed this, pick another show and watch the ending credits, and you're going to see 20, 30 people involved with it, cameras, grips, story writers, sales guys, all this other stuff. You get to the end of mine, you see one producer, one camera. My wife's my business administrator, and I'm the executive producer, and that's it.
Yep.
And, we anchor the block Saturday morning. We are the epitome of a small business owner, and I'm going to tell you what, it's 24/7, but we really take pride in putting a good product out there. And if you look, South Carolina full circle to the whole thing. South Carolina always, and North Carolina for that matter, always has a slot, if not, a couple slots each. Not because it's easy for me to go shoot in South Carolina, but because that's where my heart is.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I know it is. I mean, that Jamie Huff, I know, is a big mutual friend of ours.
Brother from another mother.
Brother from another mother. Another friend that I think might be a mutual friend is Gary Rimmensnyder.
Oh, hey, let me tell you, if not but for Gary Rimmensnyder, I wouldn't be here. He was, I'll put it to you this way. When I was in my terrible twos, for lack of a better way of putting it, he's the one that put the choker chain around my neck and got me steered in the right direction. And I mean that with every sense of the word. The guy's, he, with his career and the intelligent moves he made from a business standpoint, and if you're wondering, why am I giving him such compliments? I've got no dog in the hunt. He doesn't provide anything at all to me now other than the knowledge base he gave me coming up. And, I mean, if not but for him helping me along the way with my career before I left Big Water Adventures, and he was the one that signed the agreement with Penn when I started the show. The very first year that we had Penn on the show was at the very beginning. And has always been, a confidant. And with what he did with Luz, him and Lynn Reeves,
Yep.
taking that brand from essentially an afterthought to the, one of the top in the country. And yeah, he's not only is he a mutual friend, but that guy right there is my success. I would not be where I am today on so many levels, if not for him.
I'll tell you, I want to, real quick, I got introduced to him through my involvement with Let's Fish TV or Fox Sports Outdoors, the show that I do reports on. Barry, the host, was sponsored and still is by Luz. And about 6 years ago, Barry said, you need to call this guy up, Gary. You need to call Gary up and talk to him. He wanted to. He had some questions for you. He ended up that Gary's brother lived here in the Greenstrand area. But Gary and I got to talking, and I didn't even realize I was talking to the CEO of Luz. So we had a great conversation. And then I finally found out who it was, and